Jordan Peterson once said, "Comedians look at the problem and then rise above it right away and make a joke about it." Don't worry, this isn't a political video, but the essence of this description pinpoints something largely underappreciated, I think, which is that there is no humor without recognition. After rewatching Hunt for the Wilder People, I think Taika Waititi is quickly becoming one of my favorite directors because he has a very specific signature as an auteur in being able to recognize the incredibly honest and awkward truths of human flaws and celebrates it with a sense of glee and appreciation. I mean, just look at the scene.
Ricky Baker, now you are 13 years old. You are a teenager and you're as good as gold. Ricky Baker. Oh. Ricky Baker.
It's completely ridiculous, but oddly truthful. A woman trying to impress a kid on his birthday, and it's not some amazing dramatized singing that makes you fall in love with how perfect this maternal figure is. You instead love this odd woman because the awkwardness is honest. There is no artificial glow in the direction, you just see the glow that is already there. And looking back on Thor Ragnarok, this $200 million movie where most of the dialogue is just improv and even features a scene where the Hulk punches a giant werewolf, I was struck by how Waititi's style is still piercingly apparent through all the clear structuring from the Marvel formula. I mean, just right off the back, if you compare it with like the first Thor movie and in Dark World, they both open with these gigantic, dramatic and epic monologues that establishes a sense of gravitas. It's telling the audience to be at awe by how important the story is.
An ancient force of infinite destruction. The most ruthless of their kind, Malekith, sought to transform our universe back into one of eternal night, and the source of their power was taken from them. Without it, the Dark Elves fell. Our armies drove the Frost Giants back into the heart of their own world, or against these creatures.
But now look at Thor Ragnarok's opening.
Now I know what you're thinking. Oh no, Thor's in a cage, how did this happen? Well, sometimes you have to get captured just to get a straight answer out of somebody.
He knowingly narrates to himself his own tales while pretending he's communicating to a skeleton. So as a result, we have a scene where Thor tells a story within our story, narrating to us to narrate to himself, to narrate to an inanimate object. There's this inherent satirical edge that's kind of established. Thor Ragnarok is a story about stories. Wait, hold on, let me check what the satirical means. Oh yeah, this is what I thought it was. It exaggerates itself in order to expose the pomposity of how serious we take these stories. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
And bury my sword deep in Asgard.
Hang on. Give it a second. I swear, I'm not even moving, it's just doing this all the time.
Just look at Loki's introduction as Odin. It very quietly establishes the context of this theme.
Oh shit.
He inflates his own ego with a heavily dramatized version of his own death, and the costumes, the famous actors, the dramatic choir, and the really on-the-nose moral lesson are all presentational values that are legitimate techniques, but in the scene they're all subservient to a punchline that actually poses back to see that this is all absurd. We live in a silly world where society has orientated itself with more focus on fiction and clear narratives than reality, and this is the central theme to Ragnarok. It's an examination of storytelling, and I'm not pulling this out of my ass, it's reflected in almost every single scene in the movie. An example is, look at this frivolous quick banter that's like 10 seconds with the Grandmaster.
Slaves have armed themselves.
I don't like that word.
Which mainframe?
No. Why would I not like mainframe? No, the yes word, yes word.
Sorry, the prisoners with jobs have armed themselves.
Alright, did you catch it? The setup of the joke is a problem, and the punchline is literally, that makes me uncomfortable, so let's look at it differently. It's literally a jab on how society uses narratives and stories in order to relinquish individual responsibility. It reminds me of it when like Roseanne was on Jimmy Kimmel and he tried to like talk about politics but actively avoided talking about serious areas because he clearly didn't know anything, but he still tried to be an authority in a subject matter regardless.
Did you agree with her foreign policy?
Listen. Never mind her foreign policy. How about Captain Wacko we got running the country here? I mean, the foreign policy.
And this one joke in Ragnarok so quietly highlights the inherent problem with all narratives. Society always takes the easy route when it comes to worldviews, especially when it's overtly informed by ideologies, because ideologies are meta-narratives, so when details can't be positioned into a convincing story, it just gets ignored, and society has become more ignorant because of it. I mean, if you study a social science long enough, you kind of just realize this is just something that's unavoidable, because everything is ultimately discourse. Stories and ideologies is like taking a picture. To make it look nice, you have to cut a whole lot out that surrounds it. Unless you go to an American university, then I guess you just don't get taught this. I'm sorry, I'm gonna try and stay out. I said this isn't a political video. I'm gonna try to stay out of politics. And that's the very center of Thor Ragnarok's discussion, the consequences of this process. Both Asgard and Sakaar are societies that share this characteristic, a world shaped by someone's worldview. And Hela's role in the story is the knife that pierces through everything, that exposes the ignorant underbelly that has bubbled up under all this time. She's Odin's dark secret. She's society's dark secret. The embarrassment of a generation of colonialism that has built a society populated by privileged middle and upper class self-righteous fools that care more about entertainment and fashionable politics while being unaware of the severity of the world they live in. And oh I mean, I don't think you can get any more obvious than this literal Muriel scene.
Odin, proud to have it, shamed of how he got it.
There is no easy way to look at this world. Anyone who claims there is are liars. But on the other hand, this movie is still a sci-fi fantasy improv comedy, right? So of course it doesn't settle with this extremely grim art house view of the world, because at the other corner of this movie is a more light-hearted examination of innocence, because there is no ignorance without innocence and no innocence without ignorance. And this is explored with Thor and Loki. In a lot of ways, they embody a fun duality of how storytelling is an innocent, selfless, and selfish act. Taika relishes this by presenting them as effectively a pair of kids who enjoy entertaining others as much as they enjoy entertaining themselves. Thor enjoys telling his life story back to himself. Loki enjoys watching a stage production of his own life. Thor declares himself as a hero multiple times.
I choose to run toward my problems and not away from them. That's what... Because that's what heroes do.
Loki refers to himself as a savior. They're both unconsciously vain, because like Thor loves his golden hair and Loki wears a suit even in incognito. And when Hela appears, she thinks the adopted son is more like the father than the biological one.
Perhaps we can come to an arrangement.
You sound like him.
Hell, one of the first moments they're truly together are as two kids sitting with their father listening to them tell a story, just like they did in Thor 1. Another is when they specifically perform together to beat up a group of gods. And this is important in the film's central discussion. Ignorance is bad, but like the characters, these stories keep us in a childlike, wondrous state in a bleak world. It doesn't make us blind as much as it helps us to cope. Our fathers are heroes as much as they are bastards, we ourselves are villains as much as we are heroes, and the influencers will always be those that are particularly consciously ignorant. And all of the media surrounding us will always be informed by political narratives, and this tragedy shapes the story. Thor at the end can't even save Asgard, and he can't even beat up Hela. In fact, Thor's lesson is that his actions are literally futile in saving his home. In all cases, it's a downer of a climax, and what I find so fascinating is that Waititi doesn't sigh or feel defeated while directing the bleakness of the story, but sees it with an odd sense of wonder. When the movie ends, Thor and all the Asgardian refugees are left homeless and lost. No one has any idea where to go, and the dramatic music stops abruptly. The movie doesn't end with a bittersweet note or even tragedy. We don't have a heartbroken Thor looking sadly at his people and saying, "I'm sorry, I failed you all," or "I hope we can learn from the mistakes of our fathers," or something like that, and then roll credits. Instead, Thor just casually says,
Earth it is,
before the goofy synth soundtrack plays. And I think that's the oddly powerful statement that Thor Ragnarok has, which is, have a laugh.
So, you know, I am attracted to the outsider, okay? That's a lot of the theme in my work is exploring this idea of people who don't belong, and, you know, I'm always inspired by the outsider artist. And, you know, I love the naive. I love people who can see things through, the, you know, like I say, the lens of with an innocent viewpoint, I think, you know.
The whole film is almost like a metaphor for this realization. Old narratives make us ignorant, but our innocence is what makes us imaginative, at least enough to leave them and wander off bravely.